What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Sean Moore. We're back with our Whiskey Wednesday episode where we take hot topics and see how they affect us in our short-term rental investing journey. I'm back with Mike and Josh and our main man in the studio, Jake, over here. So, guys, appreciate you joining me. We're going to dive in. As always, a reminder, this episode is just taking hot topics, talking about short-term rental, how it affects our short-term rental investing journey. You guys are always welcome to email in questions, and this is the episodes where we will answer those questions. We don't have any emailed in questions today. And so we'll, as a reminder, email them into support@vodyssey.com. If you have some questions, whatever it happens to be with your short-term rental investing journey, we'll get them answered on an upcoming episode of Whiskey Wednesday. And a huge thank you. I just saw in the notes, 500,000 podcast downloads. So that's awesome. We got 500. We just rolled over 500,000 podcast downloads. So appreciate you guys sharing the show, following it, listening, and being active subscribers on our platforms, whatever you're watching or listening on. It's much appreciated. And so thank you so much for doing that, because I think I went 2 years and I had maybe 10 downloads. And so I feel like I was talking weekly and nobody was listening. My mom would give me a thumbs up once in a while, but that was about it. So it was, it felt like we're getting some little action here. So next, shout outs. We've got David and Mallory in our property is in the Voyager. Where's this one at? Port Aransas, Texas. Mike, you know all about this one, right?
I do. Yeah, we did a great design with them, and they actually did a full do-it-yourself install, and they absolutely smoked it. It was fantastic.
Yeah, awesome. All the very immersive, kind of our customized artwork. You guys always know we post these properties. Success leaves clues. It's a reason we give a shout out, but also so you guys can go click on it and check it out. Great job, David and Mallory. Yeah, I remember this one now. Remember pulling this one up and checking it out. A full DIY, lots of work, lots of time and effort that they put into, really putting the Vodyssey recipe in play without you having to go do it, Mike, with your guys' teams on the full install.
Well, what's interesting is the moment they finished it, their immediate neighbor came over and saw the place and then found us online and wanted to know if we could come and do the same thing for them. And I said, we sure can, as soon as you become a Vodyssey member. And they were like, well, what is Vodyssey? And I told them all about it. And they said, well, why can't you just work with us? And I said, well, as a Vodyssey member, we serve our community, and we're only going to, put someone that's part of our community with the exact same stuff next door to someone in our community. And so they're actually looking at joining Vodyssey now because the house is so good that they're concerned it's going to destroy their bookings.
Happens a lot when we go into markets. It is one of those things that we keep it. All of our Vodyssey design signature stuff is exclusive to our Vodyssey family. So those of you that are checking some of this stuff out, wondering how you get access to it, there you go. Reach out to us. We'll talk to you about what the Vodyssey recipe and community looks like. Our next home is Eric Harlan in Bradenton, Florida. This is a really fun one. Lots of fun outdoor space, another immersive design inside, lots of fun. Mike, your guys' team, you guys actually went and installed this one, right? Did you spend some time over here?
We did the install. We just finished up the lifestyle photo shoot. My voice is a little hoarse, if you can't tell, so I'm going to be grunting in the microphone a little bit for you. I'm so sorry. But yeah, we finished it up. And it looks absolutely fantastic. One of the cool things that the homeowner did there, Eric, is he built this really fun putt-putt course in the backyard that spells the word Bradenton all the way down the side of the house. And it was a really interesting move because that side of the house is usually just a completely useless dead space, right? Where you've got your pool equipment or your HVAC equipment or something. And we do a lot of bocce ball courts or putting greens down those sides because they're usually, 6 to 10 feet wide and 40, 50 feet long, and they're just dead. So he went in there and built a really cool putting green that spells out, like I said, Bradenton, with little traps and things in there, and beautiful backyard, really cool design. And we already have the number one producing home in Bradenton down the street from there. And I have no doubt that this one is going to be right up there with it. It's absolutely
It's
beautiful.
fun when we kind of raise the bar in a market and we see these Vodyssey signature properties, just kind of pushing each other, right? It's like we just keep raising the bar, setting new high water marks. So it's a lot of fun. So congrats to David and Mallory and Eric for great listings. I know it's a lot of work to get these properties launched and set up and, purchased, set up, launched, all those different things. And they look amazing, and super excited for you guys both rolling into your peak season right around the corner. And then those, some of the dollar bills start coming back in the pocket instead of everything going out. So that's always an exciting time as an investor. So, okay, guys, we've got a couple topics we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about shrinking lead times and the surge of last minute bookings. Josh, I'm going to come to you with that one. We're going to talk about Spirit Airlines shutdown, how that's affecting some of the travel and what that looks like, especially down in the Southeast. And then we're going to talk about Disney and some of the backlash that Disney's getting. Mike, I'm going to come to you with that one as well. So we will, Josh, we're going to start with the shrinking lead times. We've been talking about this for a little while. Like I've been telling everybody, hey, be very, very careful about discounting too soon and saying, well, this is how we always do it. We're going to discount 30 days out. We're going to discount, 15 days out. And what we're seeing is we saw that the data is showing that the average booking window lead times fell from 19 days to 15 days in 2026 for January from 2022 down to 2026. Just 15 days is the average booking lead time. That's crazy. So if you were giving discounts 30 days out, just on average, you're leaving money on the table. The next thing is the last minute booking dominance is coming in. 29% of reservations are coming in 0 to 7 days. And, those are big stats that we're paying attention to. We're also seeing that the those peak season, like far out bookings, even those times when everybody wants to come in July and for their 4th of July, and we're normally seeing our calendar book out 90 days in advance. We've been talking about this for a long time, and it's finally good to start seeing some of the data sources that we're looking at start to talk about this stuff as well. So Josh, I'm going to let you dive into it as well.
Awesome. Yeah, guys. So this came up on Price Labs back early April. It says a bunch of different things. We talk about most of these things a good bit. We're going to dial first off, obviously the shrinking of lead times. We've been seeing that more and more since post-COVID, with more owners putting more flexibility in their cancellation schedules, right? And with the consumer realizing that they can do this more often, and the fact that if you're an Airbnb host, you get rewarded by having more flexibility in your calendar. So naturally, those top properties are going to start shifting their things around because they're getting more exposure, they're getting more bookings. All those pieces are falling into place. Another piece of this article here goes over rate protection, where savvy professional property managers prioritize protecting their rates and stay restrictions over blindly chasing occupancy. I'm a firm believer in that. When you look at a property that's 90% occupied, and that's a legit number, that property is getting beat up. Right. Well, we know that property is going to be having some day-to-day problems down the road, whether that be HVAC, whether that be, furniture, whatever it is. And there's a certain inverse or certain inflection or certain point to where you're able to maximize your rates. Right. And then minimize to a point occupancy. We obviously want to push those peak seasons. We want to get what we can in the off seasons, but at a certain point, just blindly pushing occupancy. And that all loads into lead times to where a lot of those older big box or legacy style PMs, they're going to drop their prices significantly, right? 30 days out, 60 days out to fill the summer calendar. Right? Versus what are they leaving at 10, 20%? If we're seeing that 20, 25% of the market isn't booking in a lot of these areas till 7 days out, what are we dropping, right? How much are we leaving back there? Another piece here in that same article, talking about the human bias. And I was literally on the phone with a Vodyssey member earlier today about this. The human bias. Guests often rate companies more realistically and harshly than individual human hosts. This makes listing quality critical to justify professional pricing. Yep. So something, that Sean, I learned from you, years ago, was when you're trying to find a manager, you're trying to find someone to help you deliver that top tier guest experience, right? Are we seeing that person's name being mentioned in the reviews? And if they're saying, Josh was a wonderful host, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and we see that repeatedly time and time again, we know that Josh is communicating well with that consumer. Right. And we had a management question with a Vodyssey member earlier today I was speaking with, and we were not seeing that. And we were seeing some negative reviews come in. And it's all the guest is deciding on your 5-star review before they even book the place. right? How we're marketing it. And when they do decide to book or communicate, how are we personalizing that message? I'm all about automating some of the peanut butter and jelly stuff, right? But you need to have some personalization in there. And at a certain level, at a certain size, and why we like a lot of our smaller boutiques property managers at a certain size, that personalization starts to go out the window. Right. And these are the reviews that we start to see.
Yeah. And we've said this for a long time. And I, you really just, it feels like we were talking, Mike and I were talking a little bit before we started hitting play. We said, I feel like there's only so many, fundamentals we can talk about. And, but the truth is, we talk about them so often because so many people forget about them. And what we forget about is this human element to business. And when you're talking about, like, people don't want to do business with a company. They want to do business with people. And like you're even seeing it, somebody or these, hosts that have a person behind it, a name and a face behind their hosting account versus a corporate account, they're much more likely to get higher reviews. The corporate accounts are much more likely to get bad reviews because the consumer is like, I'm not hurting anybody's feelings. Like, I don't have to talk bad about Josh. I can talk bad about, ABC management company, right? And it's not, and I get really tough behind the keyboard, and I don't feel like I'm hurting Josh's feelings, right? And so just that element alone, the consumer is more comfortable leaving bad reviews for a company and good reviews for a person. Just knowing consumer behavior should tell you, hey, listen, I got to personalize this. But then take it a step further is actually how you operate in business. Like, we always look for management companies that they have their names, the person's name mentioned in reviews. All of those different things you're talking about makes a big difference, because we also know in this same article we talked about, and it was talking about that the hosting accounts that have 5-star reviews versus the ones that have lower than that ratings command higher nightly rates. So the consumer is willing to pay you more because they know they're going to get a better service on that. The other thing that's really, really important to note is the big box management companies for a long time, the legacy management companies, and everybody just copies what everybody else is doing in this game. And so what happens is we all say, well, we're maximizing for occupancy. We're maximizing for, and there's an inverse relationship between occupancy and rates. And I always tell people, wouldn't you rather have the lowest possible occupancy with the highest possible revenue? Because less wear and tear on your property. If you are managing your property, way fewer logistical things you have to worry about, way fewer turns, organizing cleaners, organizing maintenance, or, check-ins and check-outs and all those different things. And so what we really try to do is push those rates, but you can only push the rates if you're giving the consumer a reason to pay you more. One of them is the things we were talking about with these immersive experiences. But second is, how are we delivering that experience? Is it personalized? Are we doing a good job of that actual delivery? So the consumer is starting to give us 5-star reviews. And the other, the prospective consumers that are thinking about coming in can look at all of that and say, yeah, this makes sense that I'm going to pay more money for that. It will affect our occupancy, but that is, in our opinion, many times a good thing. We're starting to see that management companies now are leaning and realizing that. They're realizing that how hard it is to manage 100 properties that operate at 90% occupancy. Forever, they would just drop the rates and take whatever they could get. They're starting to realize that logistically, running a business like that is really hard. Dealing with, 100 properties at 90% occupancy, that's a lot of check-ins, a lot of check-outs, a lot of cleanings, a lot of maintenance, all of that different stuff. And they're starting to say, maybe there is something to maybe doing a little bit better job, pushing the rates and having a lower occupancy, making the same amount of money with less work, right? And so at the end of the day, all of these different things we're talking about is really, how are we running a business? How are we managing this revenue? And they're all those little things that we talk about all the time, over and over and over again. The reason we repeat ourselves so often is because these are the fundamentals of success in this business. And so, I always, I love when we see these articles coming out. And this one was put out by Price Labs, which is one of the main price optimization tools. They're a very, very detailed and very good data source at this stage to be able to look and see what the market's doing, what the consumer's doing, and giving some really good advice. And I love that they're starting to, other people besides us are starting to talk about this as a way of doing business here. And so, speaking of business, we had a airline go out of business. this week. And so on Saturday, I think Friday, Spirit Airlines basically said, hey, we're out of business as of Saturday, no customer service, everything else shut down. And so, a big blow to a lot of travelers. It's a budget airline. An airline, predominantly down in the Southeast for those flights. And, they've been struggling ever since the pandemic. Really, they've filed for bankruptcy twice since the pandemic. A lot of people are saying it has to do with the higher fuel prices. That's not going to put an airline out of business in a short period of time. Right?
No, America's lower back thanks them.
Right.
It's due to all of that, right? It's uncomfortable. Service is pretty poor. Seats, they're cramming an extra 48 seats on an airplane.
It's just a budget option, right? It's a bare bones
big hub in Dallas
option. And so, and I think that everything is, when it comes to consumer behavior and it comes to consumers having choices, some people are going to pay for premium choices. Some people are going to pay for budget choices. One of my favorite guys that I consume a lot of his stuff, mentor of mine for a long time that I've paid for a lot of his coaching is Dan Kennedy. And he says, if you can't make money being the cheapest game in town, there's no inherent value in being the second cheapest, right? And so you should probably go toward the premium. Obviously at Vodyssey, the things we're talking about is getting our unfair share of business operating toward the top of these markets. So our business model is different. Spirit Airlines was saying, hey, listen, we're going to be the cheapest option. It's a race to the bottom. The consumer just beats you up over price, and there's just razor thin margins. In this case, there are no margins. And, they were trying to get those, they tried to do a merger. They got shut down because of antitrust, things back when in Biden era, back in 2022. In the Trump era, they're asking for a bailout. They're saying, hey, guys, we don't just have $500 million sitting around to bail an airline out. So ultimately shut the doors. And,
what's interesting, Sean, they're tying this into what we were just saying before about rates and occupancy, right? As a host, you price out bad behavior. Right? A lot of times your worst behavior are your cheapest guests. And those that are looking to scam or, get something over on you, they don't want to pay top dollar. The entire reason they do what they do is because they don't want to pay top dollar. So if you're able to give them an immersive experience that puts you above and uncomparable to others, you can price out most of the bad behavior in these horror stories that you see. Spirit Airlines is that. Or was that, right? Basically, all the Instagram videos you see were like a JetBlue holiday or whatever. It was always them or Spirit, and it was like budget shoppers having bad experiences because of the clientele you were bringing in, right? And you didn't price out bad behavior. You gave a budget option, but without the option to be able to control that, right? And that runs the consumer.
Yeah, and it's those budget options are it's always funny when I was reading up on the merger that got shut down between them and JetBlue a few years back, and the biggest argument was that saying, well, you're going to remove the price, routes are going to decrease, rates are going to go up. We're going to remove all these things that people like about Spirit Airlines. Well, the consumer and the marketplace is unforgiving anyway. So if the rates had to go up and the routes had to go down, that's better than ultimately shutting it down altogether, saying, the government officials saying, hey, listen, if companies want to merge and they have to merge to be efficient, there is economies of scale and all those different things. I'm not an airline operator, but just being a capitalist at heart and watching consumer behavior and what happens, you're like, hey, listen, the marketplace is going to pay what it's going to pay for a crappy option, which to be really clear, these are crappy options in the airline world, but it might be what somebody chooses. We have crappy options in the short-term rental world. We choose not to be part of those options. We say, hey, listen, it's really, really hard to make money in that game. And so we say, we're not going to do it. Somebody wants to make money in that game. They have to strip everything down to bare bones. They have to be extremely efficient. And if they can, the marketplace is going to reward them. If they can't, they're out of business. And I think that's what happens with the Spirit Airlines. They're a small fraction of the airline travel overall. Like they're a sliver of the actual percentage of actual airline travel. So I don't think it affects I really don't think it affects the actual tourism industry too much. Those other carriers are going to pick up the bag and then pick up those fares, and people are going to go travel on the Frontiers, the JetBlues. There's a I think that there's like a poly market or something going on that says that there's about 75% chance those are going to go out in the next couple of years, just because there's just not, the margins aren't there for them. And so it does it get more expensive to travel with an airline? Yeah, it does. But why do you think we like those drive-to destinations, right? And so it's Jake just showed me Spirit Airlines accounts for roughly 4.5% of U.S. domestic airline travel. So it's not a large enough percentage to matter as far as making a difference or a dent in our short-term rental, the tourism industry, all of that stuff. In my opinion, somebody else is going to pick that up, but it's it's business 101. It's like, hey, listen, we've got to figure out what the consumer is willing to pay for in the absence of value, and in the absence of more legroom or checked baggage or nicer planes or all of those different things. In the absence of that, the consumer is judging you on price, and it's just a race to the bottom. And that's a really, really tough place to play. And it 100% applies to our business, short-term rentals. It applies to really every other business out there. And our opinion is, and the reason I think it's good to talk about this, not necessarily that it affects the tourism industry as much as the way we look at our business and the way we choose to operate our business. Like Dan Kennedy said, if you can't make money being the low price leader, you can't be a Walmart. There's no inherent value in being second lowest or third or fourth or in the middle. Go for the high side, right? Go for the premium. And that's what we're really trying to do. So, speaking of premium brands, Disney. Disney's having a little bit of backlash right now. Disney's struggling a little bit with their brand, their identity, with their score, like consumer sentiment about Disney for a lot of different reasons. They just laid off a whole bunch of people when it came to AI, and so they brought in a bunch of digital artists, and so we being Mike and the Vodyssey design team is looking for some digital graphic artists. So if you're shoot us over support@vodyssey.com if you're a graphic artist that's looking for some work, because we are hiring. And so, but when it comes to hospitality brands, when it comes to immersive experiences, when it comes to really creating these immersive experiences, we're really customer focused, Disney cannot be ignored as the leader in that game, right? As much as they've made some I think some bad choices recently, mostly on the movie side. They're when it comes their bread and butter business of the theme parks, the theme parks are about as immersive as they come. Their hospitality, their focus on hospitality is as good as it gets. And so they are creating a little bit of a backlash. Consumer sentiment is down a little bit as well, because it's pretty quite expensive. Talk about a premium brand, but those parks are still really crowded. And so Mike, I know that you obviously reference a lot to Disney and pay attention to what Disney's doing. And we, when we give examples, we look a lot and very closely at what Disney's doing when we try to create immersive experiences. When it comes to the design side of life, what are your opinions on Disney right now? Do you think they have anything to worry about with what's going on with consumer sentiment?
Disney has always been an interesting bird, right? Because I've said many times, and yes, Disney has had a lot of influence on our business. My mom started this company 50 years ago, and Walt Disney was her inspiration. And our company started by doing thematic rooms for children's hospitals, clinics, and different things like that decades ago. And even my handwriting, which was patterned after my mom's, looks like Walt Disney's handwriting. I mean, it's a very deep thing. My wife and I went there on our honeymoon 26 years ago. We have 3 girls that are cheerleaders. We're there several times a year for different championships. So Disney is something that we spend a lot of time interacting with, and we get a lot of inspiration from them. As you pointed out, I think that their movie choices have been a little tough lately, which has caused a lot of weird sentiment. Their bread and butter is the theme parks. It's the immersive experiences. I reference them all the time on how they bring things to life. Quite frankly, however, I feel like Universal Studios is doing an infinitely better job at storytelling right now. I think that they understand who their customer is. I think they understand the immersion aspect of experiential things that people are looking for. They're opening up. Universal is a brand new theme park here in Dallas and Frisco that is targeting children at the age of 15 and under, a family-oriented theme park where every single thing inside of it is fully immersive for kids and families 15 and under, where there's no older kids hanging out, no Six Flag effect, as we call it, where the thing gets run down because it becomes just a hangout spot for the local kids. I feel like Universal really has their finger on the pulse of experiential dynamics, where Disney is still on one side leaning into just being who they are as Mickey Mouse, Minnie Mouse, Star Wars, the different mega brands that they have now. They have, of course, Marvel, which these brands are so big that they have their own lives that keep them relevant, whether they want to be or not. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that I've always said about Disney is I wish they would just be Disney and stop getting into politics, stop getting into cultural issues, but from their executives want it no differently than how when we're doing a short-term rental design, we're thinking about the cultures, the target audience at all times, trying to create extraordinary experience, but without becoming a statement in the process. And I feel like Universal has figured that out, and they're all about the experience and not about a statement. I mean, when do you ever hear of the Universal CEO or any of their team going out to some rally or hosting some politically polarizing event? Whereas Disney is always doing that, it seems. And so they're such a big machine. I don't think Disney's ever, quote unquote, going under. They're always going to have Pixar. They're always going to have Marvel. They're always going to have Star Wars. They're always going to have the core cast of cartoon characters and Disney Junior and stuff, and the princesses. That's just going to keep it coming back. But I feel like Disney is more stagnantly hanging on, while Universal Studios is exploring the future of experiences and what's to come. And of course, we take our cues from all of these multi-billion-dollar companies figuring this stuff out. But you want to know where my money is. My kids don't even like going to Disney anymore. They want to go to Universal. Every time we were in Florida, that's where they want to be.
Yeah. Josh, anything to add to that? I'll give some final thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, ironically,
Disney's a big topic, right?
Ironically, yesterday we just booked a place in Disney, right? And so we go to Captiva, Florida. We're out of South Carolina. We go there every single year. We stop halfway down, right? And this year I'm like, hey, their kids are old enough. We're not going to do a theme park, but let's stop at a themed place in Orlando for one night on a Friday night. A lot of your top performers aren't going to be available for one night on a Friday in their peak season, right? So our choices were more limited. Most of those properties were bare bones. They all have the pool. They all have the lanai, not a lot of theming. The only property that was available, guess whose membership they are? They were a Vodyssey member. Shane, Vacation Alchemy guys. Shout out to you guys. Yeah. Beautiful properties. And it was the only property that was themed out the wazoo. And I showed it to my mom, my mother-in-law, my wife, my sister-in-law's family goes. And they're like, we don't want to stop in Orlando unless we're staying at this property. And you know what that property was? The most expensive property out of that list. And we booked it. And it just happened to be a Vodyssey property. And that was a property we were going to go with no matter what. And so great job, guys. Vodyssey method works.
Yeah. So. Yeah. It's, Disney is one of those, like, a lot of the questions are, what about, how are these markets going to fare? Where Disney's, reputation is dropping a little bit. And how is the greater Orlando area? How is is it going to affect it where it's not the home base of short-term rentals, literally in the US? And I just don't see that happening. One, I totally agree with you, Mike. I wish they would just stay in their lane. I think that Disney is such an iconic US company that, just be that for everybody, right? When you start getting political, it doesn't matter what side you're on, you're going to piss half the people off. There makes zero sense to do that as a marketer, right? And so, you just stay in your lane. And I mean, we love the hero's journey, which all these stories have, and we have elements that we can relate to. And we grew up with Disney, and like I'm rooting for Disney to get it back together and say, hey, listen, let's get Disney back as the reputation that they deserve. I shouldn't say deserve. I think they're getting a little bit of what they deserve right now. I want them to get back to the core of where they the
family brand.
Exactly.
It's if you look at what Walt Disney himself put on the plaque right in front of the Cinderella's castle with him holding Mickey's hand, that plaque speaks purely to a place for families to get together and have adventure. That was Walt Disney's dream. That was Walt Disney's vision. I feel like he'd be rolling in his grave knowing that 1,000 animators just got let go for robots to take over. I feel like there would be some sense of honor code for what makes Disney, but at the same time, everybody's evolving. If we're not too careful, none of us are going to be able to afford to go on vacation because AI is going to have all of our jobs if we keep on those trends. But
not according to Elon Musk. Elon said that none of us have to have jobs, and we're just going to have money coming in because AI is going to do everything. I don't know who's paying who, but I mean, according to Elon Musk, basically you don't even have to worry about retirement savings anymore. I just barely heard him talk about that last week. He said, don't even, if you're in your 30s or 40s, don't put money away from retirement. You're not going to need it because AI robots are going to just make life easy.
Just make your money for you.
Yeah, exactly. I
can you get me a couple of those? Can we? Is that right?
We need a couple of those. I think that the AI topic with Disney laying off. I mean, it is one of those things that AI does create efficiencies. You can do. Maybe you only need one person to do two people's jobs, but I also think it also opens up some opportunities, just like any other. Other major technological shift, throughout the course of history, it creates all new industries. And so I'm not too worried about that as much. I do think that Disney, I'm rooting for them. I do want Disney to be, what it has always been, which is just an iconic American company for families. Yeah. It represents something that I think is awesome. And I love, I love the story of how it started. I love everything about it. I'd love to see them get back to, the top of the mountain when it comes to reputation. I think that, we go to, like, I'm not a Disney fan. I'm not a huge Disney fan as far as visiting Disney stuff. Right. But in fact, I was at Disneyland or Disney World last time I was at Disney World. We took our kids. And I was on Main Street on my way out, and Cinderella's castle's behind me. And I started videotaping like this and started turning around my videotape. And my wife's like, "Oh, that's so cute," because she knows I don't like going there. Mostly it's just because of crowds. If you know me, I don't like to go anywhere there's more than 10 people. So has nothing to do against Disney. It has to do with this crowded. And so I'm doing it. She's like, "Oh, that's so cute," And she said, "Why are you videoing, the experience and everything else?" I said, "No, I'm videoing this. So if I ever want to book a trip again, I play this video and show me how many people are here." So it was, but I'm rooting for them. I still want them to do well. And they are such an iconic reminder of what people will pay for when you give them those immersive experiences, and you give them
100%,
and that's the game that we play, right? And a lot of their reputation is going down a little bit. It says in some of these polls based on pricing that they're charging, right? But if you're able to charge premium prices and people keep paying it, that means you're providing a really good service, right? And so, it's hard to knock them on price. It'd be great to have them, be a little more affordable, but that, the marketplace is going to dictate pricing. I'm not here to tell them they should be more affordable or not. I just hope that they get back to the core of what Disney is all about, personally, because I'm rooting for them to be just the good old days of being the iconic. When you think about anything with vacations, travel, it's always Disney. Disney's part of that conversation, whether you're going or not. When you think about vacation, it has to do, there's something about Disney that's always there. We go to, in fact, in 2 weeks, we're going every single week for my kid's birthday. We go to Hawaii. we go to Colina and we stay at a Marriott there, which is right. There's 4 places. There's a Four Seasons, there's a Iulani, which is a Disney hotel, and a Residence Club and a Marriott. And they're right on this lagoon together. And every single day, my kids want to walk over to the Disney resort, and we always go get our coffee, and then they walk through the gift shop and they look at what they're going to buy for the they're going to get one thing that they're going to buy there, but they go there every day to see what's going to be. And it's always money spent at the Disney store at Iulani, nowhere else, all the other shops we go to. And so there's just a draw of Disney. And when you're around it, it's a brand that is very recognizable, I should say. And so I hope the reputation comes back. So guys, that's all on my list today. As a teaser, next week, we've got some things going on the regulation side where states are starting to step in and say, hey, those local and those smaller municipalities, county and city municipalities might be overstepping their bounds a little bit with some regulations. And so Josh has got some good stuff on the agenda for next week. So we'll wrap it up today. As always, we appreciate you guys joining us. The only favor I ask you at the end of every episode is to share the show with anybody that you think might be like to be a part of these conversations. Our goal is to always help you walk into this game with your eyes wide open. Every single Wednesday, we're going to tie into current events, topics that affect our short-term rental investing journey. But also on Fridays, we bring in short-term rental investors willing to share the good, the bad, the ugly, all of the in-betweens, so that you as an investor can raise the bar, avoid some mistakes, double down on the things that we know are working, and really help accelerate your progress in the short-term rental investing journey. And we don't run ads or sponsorship. So the only thing and the only way this show grows is if you guys share it. And so if you don't have anybody to share it with, like it or review it, those algorithms are really good at finding people like you to share it and put it in front of. And so they base that on your reviews. And so if you have more than 30 seconds, those things are very appreciated. And the final, most important thing I ask you at the end of every episode is pick that one thing you can do today, start building that life you don't want to take vacation from. Cheers, my friends. Cheers, boys.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast. Share this with other people you think need to hear about it. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Hey Grace, is there a website?
Yes! For more amazing content and expert advice, visit Vodyssey.com.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.